Welcome back for Chapter 11 review. Thank you for joining me. Chapter 11, remember, was all about rational expressions. So, fractions with x or with variables in them. And again, I've broken this down into 4 learning targets for us. Can you simplify? Can you multiply and divide? Can you add and subtract? And can you solve? So again, let's dive right in. So to simplify rational expressions, to me, that's kind of a 3-step process. And remember, first of all, I always asked you, put your glue on, okay? So put your parentheses around there because putting parentheses on those fractions will hopefully remind you that you're gonna have to factor that, all right? So the top, when I say factor, that just means factor a 2 out. On the bottom, x squared minus 5, you are subtracting 2 perfect squares. So remember that is a difference of squares. Difference of squares, meaning you have the plus minus relationship. So x and x, 5 and 5. Now, once you put your glue on, once you factor, now you can cancel any common parenthesis that you see. So here, these x plus 5s cancel off. You'll just have 2 over x minus 5. The topic of excluded values. Remember, excluded values come from what x's can you not use? Well, here we have to focus on the bottom, right? We have 2 concerns on the bottom. Because of this first one, we can't use -5, because if we use -5, that parenthesis would become 0. Over here on the right-hand side, we don't want to use +5 because, again, same story, it would make us divide by 0. So in this case, because we have 2 factors on the bottom, we have 2 things that we want to make sure we do not divide by, that we don't use. Same thing here. So again, the beginning, put your glue on, please. Now, in this case on top, quadratic trinomial, again, hopefully you recognize that's going to be just our normal 2 parenthesis factoring. X and x to get the x squared. To multiply to -20 means we have 2 things of opposite sign. And it looks like to me we're going to have a +10, -2. On the bottom to factor that, well, the thing that I notice is a 2 comes out right away. But then also notice x is in both terms. There's only 2 terms, x is in both of them. So I'm actually just going to factor out a greatest common factor. I'm going to factor out that 2x. To leave me with x plus 10. Same thing as last time. Now, because I have common parentheses, I can factor them out, leaving me with x minus 2 on top and that 2x on the bottom. So that's my simplified form, my reduced form. Now for my excluded values. Well, here, whenever you have something with an x just out front, remember that just means x can't be 0, okay? This piece right here means you also don't want x to be -10. And so in this case, again, there's 2 things on the bottom, 2 factors on the bottom, therefore you have 2 excluded values. All right, moving right along. So multiplying and dividing these things. So multiplying and dividing, in some instances, are just playing around with the rules of exponents. So for example here, 9 over 3 would just reduce to a 3 over 1. 8 over 2 would just reduce to a 4 over 1. So on top, that would just leave a 12, 4 times 3. On the bottom, I see an x squared and an x to the first. And because they're both on the bottom, that would combine to an x cubed down on the bottom. Because they're both on the bottom, they contribute to each other down there. So again, that one to simplify is really just using rules of exponents to do so. This next one, I'm going to put my glue on. All right, so x squared minus 16, that is two perfect squares being subtracted. So remember, that's going to be our difference of squares pattern. X and x to give us the x squared, 4 and 4 to give us the 16. 2x minus 8. I see a greatest common factor there. Okay, a greatest common factor of 2. So let's see what we have in common this time in order to simplify. So I see the x minus 4's, the 5x's. So in this case, the only thing that doesn't is the 2 and the x plus 4. Then, of course, when dividing, make sure you multiply by the reciprocal, okay? So again, what that means is here, I'm sorry, that was a typo. So here, when we're dividing these, so again, please change that to division. That's a typo on my part that it wasn't there. Remember, when you're dividing things, well, you kind of follow the same steps. So here, put your glue on. And remember, in a dividing question, remember, you end up flipping that second piece. Okay, so you flip that second fraction. Use the reciprocal of that second fraction. Now, that glue hopefully reminds you you need to factor this, okay? So the x squared minus 49. Again, you've seen it multiple times already in these videos. That is a difference of squares. X and x, 7 and 7. Oh, I'm sorry, that should be multiplying now. Once you flip it, it changes it to multiplying. I apologize. A quadratic trinomial will factor into the normal two parentheses. X times x will give us x squared. 2 and 4 will factor correctly. All right, so here what we get, the x plus 7's cancel, x plus 4's cancel. Well, here the interesting thing is, notice we have the x minus 7, x plus 2 left on top, and then actually everything canceled off the bottom. So really there is no denominator anymore, right? The denominator completely canceled off. Now, when you're dividing by a monomial, so that's when you're dividing two fractions. What if you're just dividing by a monomial? Well, in that case, remember, you just split this up, right? You show taking that 6x to the 5 divided by 2x squared and the 8x cubed divided by the 2x squared. If you're just dividing by a monomial, literally just write it out and then simplify each piece. 6 divided by 2 is 3. X to the 5 divided by x squared, subtract exponents, that'll leave you with a 3. 8 divided by 2 is 4. X cubed divided by x squared, again subtract exponents, leaves you an x to the first. And there you go. All right. Well, what about adding and subtracting? So adding and subtracting, well, this is where you really need your common denominators, right? In fact, this is the only time you need common denominators. So in this first one, because the bottoms are already the same, I can legitimately just combine the tops together, and then the bottom is just what the bottom is because it was already common. Again, before you try to simplify, hopefully you remember you always, always want your glue on top. I see I can factor out a 2 from this. On the bottom, you've seen this all over these review notes. We're talking about difference of squares. So of course we get that plus minus relationship. So you get the x's and the 9's. Of course now you can cancel what's the same. And that'll leave you with that. Now, of course, what if the denominators are not the same? Okay, well then we need to start by getting a common denominator. Okay, so in this case we have x plus 5 and x minus 3. So the x plus 5 part, it needs that x minus 3. So I'm going to multiply top and bottom by that x minus 3 because it needs it. Same thing, the x minus 3 parenthesis needs the x plus 5. So I'm going to multiply top and bottom by whichever that one needs to have. All right. So what that does is that gets me my new common denominator. Okay, and now I just math on top. So I distribute the 2 to get 2x minus 6, distribute the negative 7 to give me negative 7x minus 35. So again, now you have your common denominator already, and you're just mathing up top. 2x minus 7x would be a negative 5x. Negative 6 minus 35 more would give me a negative 41. Then, of course, the whole point of this is I already have my common denominator. And then I would just leave it looking like that. All right, then last learning target. Can we solve rational equations? So again, you probably noticed a common theme here is glue everywhere. Okay, I always have my glue on. And to solve two fractions that equal each other, glue and then simply cross multiply. So I multiply the 3 times that x plus 1. And I set that equal to, when I multiply the 2 times the x minus 7. How do I clean that up? Well, I can distribute on both sides. So 3x plus 3, distribute the 2 there, 2x minus 14. Now I just have a linear equation to solve. So I have x's on both sides. So I'm going to get them together by subtracting off the 2x. Well, 3x minus 2x still leaves me with a 1x sitting there. Then subtract the 3 over. So negative 14 minus 3 more will give me a negative 17. And again, that covers all the learning targets for this chapter. So, just like all the others, thank you so much for joining me for this. Please log in back into Schoology And make sure you go and you take those quizzes for me. So again, thank you for joining, and go back, take those quizzes.